over in Kern County, we deal a lot with TCP 123, which is now that I know something significantly different, but it's in litigation. It's a big deal, and it's gotten into water supplies, municipalities, and now it's gotten into issues even with dealing with the Met and water supply system. So it's this seems like it's a solvent that was used for manufacturing.
Yeah, or jet fuel.
Oh, there's a bit of that out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be, it could impact every one of us as they're different constituents.
And I'm glad to hear from Angel that they're going to submit a non-production well application that'll tee it up for any questions the board or the public has. So
I've also requested that they submit as much information as possible, including the Lahontan request and work plan, and that they are here in person for the meeting.
You said there's a counterparty, or there's someone else that's speaking. Is it just them, or is there someone pushing this with an agenda? I'm just saying if there's some type of agency that could come here as well and give, just some information.
I think it's the consultant themselves that will be here.
For Air Force?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
anyway, that's all I have.
Okay. So then we'll go to number 17, which is board member request for future agenda items.
I think I added my allotment today, so I'm done.
Any other ones? Okay. Then we shall take a 5-minute break. Is that long enough? Okay. And then we'll meet in closed
I
session.
need a motion to go into closed.
And may I have a motion to do so?
Motion to do so.
And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We'll see you back in 2.
This screen share before I can share mine. It says I can't share my screen while the other participant is sharing right now.
Try again.
Okay, let's see. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Share screen. Yes. All right, can y'all see this?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So first, our summary of new production and qualified small pumpers. We currently have 1,038.92 acre feet per year of new production approved to date, and 3 acre feet of that was approved last month in the January meeting, and no change since December 2022 for qualified small pumpers. And these charts are included in the board packet. And now Maureen can give an update on our model.
As you know, we've been updating the model for the Antelope area. We wanted to be as consistent with the judgment as possible, but move it up to the recent time period. The purpose of the model is to help with the annual report change in storage, as well as assist in the material injury analyses. It's been a 3-year effort, consistent with our contract. We've reviewed the existing model. We've updated it. In 2023, we updated the recharge, that's the watershed runoff, and the surface water hydrology based on the more recent observed data. We've also finished our return flow distribution, the irrigation surplus that's applied to the land that percolates back to the groundwater. All of that, is consistent with the judgment, but updated to recent observations. Right now, we're in the calibrate model phase towards the end. We're putting everything together, the expanded grid, the expanded recharge, and making sure it still simulates the water levels we have seen over that same time period. So there's a little bit of adjustment that happens during this period just to make sure that the model is accurately simulating everything that we think is happening. And we are still on track to have it ready for this annual report, and you'll see the unveiling of the results in the annual report in the change in storage and other outputs from the model. So that's our update. I can take any questions if anybody has any curiosities about the model, but it's going well. It's just in calibration. I think Arden's assuming you don't have any questions. We'll continue on.
I moved the slide in case, because this
right.
covers the details that Maureen spelled out.
Just
Yeah,
a
this is
reminder,
their.
this is Derek. Just a quick question. So that model complete, so your prime time, when's the calendar date of that?
When we think the model will be finished?
Yes, your last bullet point.
I think calendar day, we're aiming for April. I would say April 1st, but that's not a good day. April 2nd to have the model up and running.
Great.
Gives us about a month to finish our calibration. Sometimes it's difficult to foresee if there's problems. It might take a little more work, but we're aiming for early April to have the model done, so it is ready to be used for the annual report.
So I don't know procedurally, but I think that's a big event, and maybe something that's, more of a public announcement.
Yeah, and we foresee having a detailed presentation to the board with some figures and outputs from the model when it's ready. I know Arden and I are talking about how to portray the results of the annual report this year, and maybe it's good to start with the model and we can move from there. So it's both a announcement and an understanding of what has gone into the model in case there are questions or adjustments that need to be made.
I just remember going back to 2017 and sitting in the advisory room and all the conversations about this and what flows are and what the world looks like in 10 years, and we're getting close to that. So maybe push it back to the advisory room and the public and think about a good way of making sure we can get as much attendance on that part as possible. It's important for every landowner and water holder be part of that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think transparency in modeling is critical. A lot of people see models as black boxes, but it is only as good as the data that's gone into it. And we want to make sure that the calibration and the output is accurately simulating the basin. So I think a large audience would be good to walk through in plain language the details of the model.
Sure.
And maybe the presentation could be coordinated with the sub-area semi-annual advisory meeting.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea in April.
And the model would help us with sub-area analyses. So this is a lot of connection. Okay, well, that's all I had. So if there's any other questions, or I'll hand it back over to Arden for meters.
All right, on to meters. So we discussed last month and were asked to work on updating our meter tester and installer list. And we discussed the process for adding and removing meter testers and installers with our kind of every 3-year update. So we did receive confirmation that there are 6 meter installers who are still active and enthusiastic about providing installation documentation. And we'll note that out of those 6, 4 of them were specifically for certain parties, but 2 were available to all parties. And we didn't get a response from 4, so we will continue working on directly calling them. And if we do not receive a response in another 2 weeks, then we will remove them from our list. And similarly for testers and calibrators, we heard back from 5 meter testers and calibrators. They all did both of those. And 2 of these are available for all parties to use. And we'll work on trying to get a hold of the other 4. But if we aren't able to get confirmation from them in the next 2 weeks, then we'll remove them from the list. But this does kind of calm concerns that there were not any meter installers or testers available in the valley. And so with this, we feel that we can move forward with sending out, once we have this list fully updated and uploaded onto the website, we can move forward with our plans for metering compliance letters. We discussed in January about our plans to send out letters directly to parties, informing them of what their status is regarding annual production reporting, meter documentation. And this will also can serve as another opportunity to remind those those new production parties that there has been a change to the rules and regulations, and they are required to annually report their production or else they will be invoiced. This also will be a reminder about the meter production reporting. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to everyone who has been submitting those monthly metering production reports each quarter. I have noticed an uptick of parties in compliance with that. So we wanted to get the board's approval to, once we get the meter testing and installation list ready to roll, to send out these letters. We still need to do some last work updating compliance tracking with the recent meter production reports we've received to make sure that everything's in order, and then want to just give everything one more careful review so we know that correct information is being sent out. But this is really a great opportunity for parties to reach out to us if the information that we send doesn't align with their understanding, and make sure that we're all on the same page and everyone is aware of what the responsibilities for reporting are. And this would be sent out hopefully in March, a little bit after that deadline for the for the annual production reports for 2023. And can also kind of be a nudge to remind them to get those in at their earliest convenience. Are there any questions with this?
Pardon, it's Brandon. A question for you. You said there's 2 people that are available to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Who are those 2 agencies that are local in the valley?
I don't have the list on me right now.
Okay.
I can email.
It doesn't bring somebody from Hendon, so I was curious who the local person was.
Okay, great.
Feedback on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Not on water meter, but not on water meter. But before you sign off, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I want to confirm we have direction to send the letters. I believe the draft letters were in the packet. Is there any reason not to send them, or should we go ahead with the plan that Arden laid out? Send it mid-March with our compliance.
Yeah, I'm good with sending it.
Support it.
Yes.
Russ is shaking his head yes. Matt, good?
Yes.
Yep, we're all good.
Great. So we'll move ahead with that.
Okay, you had a question.
Yeah. So just a quick question. I know during, I think the discussion of considering transfers, new extraction, you brought up the point of extraction and, and not knowing, I forget which one party it was, but so, and it may be in the annual report, and just tell me that, but if it's not, I don't have in my head how many of these transfers don't have a point of extraction, since the start. It would be great to see a list and the amount, and it just caught my head. I know there's a list of who they are, but I don't think that
other one.
Maybe, or just, I don't know if it needs to be in the monthly report, the board meeting reports, but I think it would be great.
Yes, so we do include in the annual reports. We added, I think last year, a new table that includes transfers specifically for investment purposes. And we are also planning to include the work that we did looking at by sub area, the different breakdown of production. And in that, we look at the total amount of carryover water over time that does not have an exact extraction point associated with it. But I'm happy to update those and include them in the Watermaster engineer updates if y'all do think that that would be a useful thing to keep track of each month.
I'm not sure every month is useful. I think periodically more than the annual report is useful. Or maybe just reminding me that I see it in the annual report would be great.
Okay. Would this be appropriate for maybe the sub area committee meetings each 6 months when we have those provide an update?
Great recommendation.
Okay, great. I'll include that for April. It'll be an exciting meeting in April.
Yeah.
Let me throw another thought just while we still have you here is, I think it's, and I don't know how we track this from an administration standpoint. Do we track the private sales and the values of those? No. So there's no, we just approve them and whatever the monetary value is. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions or recommendations?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that. Good report from you both. We'll go on to 16, the general counsel's report.
Yes, the main two litigation items are in closed session. But just so the board remembers, there's 2 pending appeals. The Jamalza matter, their motion to vacate the judgment, which was denied, is being appealed by them, and Beryl Springs' denial of their new production application being appealed. We'll talk about those in closed session. We're working on the carryover transfer. If you remember the last meeting, there was some discussion about what's going to happen in 10 years when carryover goes away and what is the impact of transfer water on that process. So we hope to have a memo circulated before next meeting discussing those issues and getting feedback from the different parties involved and obviously the board for next month. One other than the general enforcement matters and letters, etc., I wanted to bring to the board's attention that I believe next month there's going to be a request. I'm not sure how to frame this, but the remediation consultant for the Air Force has contacted the administrator about the need for an additional extraction well in their remediation project. And they were unclear whether they even needed board approval for that. But I think you're going to see that before the board for discussion at least. There's a TCE plume that they're dealing with historically. And I've encouraged staff to invite the remediation consultant to be available for questions from the board. Because I know the board has mentioned water quality issues and concerns in the past. And I believe the attitude of the United States in this is that this is their business. It's controlled by the regional board. There's an operations plan, a work plan that's been approved. We really don't have any jurisdiction as Watermaster. And I think we want to let them know the judge has jurisdiction over the entire basin for its health, including the impacts of water quality. So that matter may be up discussed before the board next month. And I just wanted to have you to have a heads up. You think of questions you want to ask, anything you want to direct counsel to do on the legal side. My preference is not to do anything until we hear from them. They are questioning whether they need to even be in front of the board. So I bring that to your attention because this is an unusual situation. Our rules and regs talk about monitoring wells. They don't talk about, this is an active extraction well. And their position is there's no net effect on the safe yield or production of the groundwater in the basin. That's because the water is extracted, TCE is scrubbed out, water is re-injected, and there's zero loss of water from that process. So their attitude is no harm to the basin, and questions about whether they ought to be in front of the board itself.
So, Peter, do you know, is this the same thing that we have with the ERAD and the civilian advisory over that? Is it the same?
I suspect it is, but I'm not.
Craig, this is at at Plant 42, right?
Yes.
It's not Edward.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
Plant
okay.
42.
Plan 42.
I just heard
Yeah.
So,
airport, so it's
Yeah.
thinking.
so to just
Okay.
to confirm, are you talking about TCP 123 or TCE? I heard you said what?
I think it's TCE.
Oh,
That's why I recall went from the advisory boards back in the day. So there is a local
Yeah.
restoration advisory board that meets on a quarterly basis, Dennis? Maybe not semi-annual.
We may want to get a hold of the work plan that's been approved by the regional board if anyone has an interest in reviewing that before or can ask questions, assuming the remediation consultant who made the overture to staff is available next month.
Craig, can I
Yes.
step in real quick? They are going to complete a non-production application and include all the information. And I think since their initial conversation with me, they're not so opposed anymore to dealing with the Watermaster, so it may not be a conflict when they're here. I just don't want you guys to have your, dukes up because I don't think that that's what their intentions are.
We're going to prepare and mail the replacement water assessments and variable bills. Those are supposed to be available to our customers by May 1st. We're going to assess delinquent fixed assessments as of April 1st. We just wanted to note that based on last year's schedule, April would be the right time frame to have the sub-area management advisory committee meeting. April will begin working in earnest on a draft RFP for administrative services. And you can also expect in April a presentation on the first quarter budget versus actuals from staff. So that's a look at what's coming up. Just if there's any feedback from the board on things that you think we're missing from that list, we'd be happy to hear them.
Hey, Pete, I have a question. And I should have brought it up early on the RFQ discussion, but what's the idea on the distribution list for who gets the RFQ?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a good question. So one of the things we're looking at, we're also going to present a draft list in the March meeting. We are looking at all the other adjudicated basins in Southern California and seeing who provides those services. And we're going to look at firms that are serving as Watermasters in other places and suggest them as additions to that list, as well as looking at some of the front runners from the last go around. And we'll bring that list will be available to both the board and advisory committee for their comments.
Thank you.
can I maybe just add a suggestion on that? I know there are other water districts within the state in that region that you just threw around that may not have full-time administrators as well, that may have contract or individuals. I'd recommend not just thinking about adjudicated, basins or adjudicated administrators, but I think water district, GSAs, or even agencies or districts, authorities, any of those could be good.
Okay.
People looking good.
Thank you. All right. And we'll move on to the next portion of the administrative report. We wanted to highlight something for the board and recognize that in October of last year, the board approved new rules and regs to deal with non-compliant new producers. And that's going to have an impact on the variable billings that are going out in April. So just a quick look there, you've got over 100 new producers, and most of those are not in compliance. And the lack of compliance is production reporting and meter verification. So in those new rules and regs, section 14N and O, they address this issue. We met with Craig and discussed what should be the process moving forward in applying those new rules and regs to the non-compliant new producers in 2024. Next slide, please.
We have somebody that has a question online. You can go ahead. Can you state your name, please? We have no idea the phone number.
805. You can state your question.
Is the next slide a continuation of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just wanted to highlight those new applicable sections of the rules and regs. So it deals with parties that have failed to report their annual production, and it allows for the revocation of their of essentially their right as a new producer. So that is something that we'll be alerting those non-compliant parties to with a letter from Craig. Next slide, please. The other one that really impacts our variable billing is this new rule and reg 14.0. So I'm going to read through it and for clarity purposes. So in the event a party with approved new production rights fails to timely submit an annual production report, then such party will automatically be invoiced for the full amount of the approved new production right. And the approval of the new production application will automatically be suspended until such party submits all past due annual production reports and pays all past due replacement water assessments. So what we're interpreting this as is that in 2024, if they have not produced production reports, then whatever their production right is, if it's 1 acre foot or 10 acre feet, we're going to bill them replacement water assessments for that full right. And we're going to do that starting 2024 and going forward. So next slide.
And Peter, they'll be billed the current of the replacement water.
That is correct.
Just want to make sure that's.
And would it include prior years as well? So if there are multiple years of no production reports, would it be all past years?
So that's a good question, and
The answer should be yes.
yeah,
Or my opinion, yeah.
I agree with that opinion.
I think that's. I understand the board's perspective on that. We wrestled with this. I'm talking to Craig, and this portion of the rules and regs is not retroactive, whereas other portions of the rules and regs I think the 14N section does say it's retroactive. So we felt more confident stating that we would do this moving forward than going back to 2017 and applying the max.
Well, then it sounds like we need an amendment for the rules and regs.
Yeah. I'm guessing council is advising us that even if we tried to make an amendment, it couldn't really be retroactive because the parties didn't know at that point in time.
I think the reasoning was that going retroactive had some legal implications that we weren't at that point of wanting to assume. And it was better to get the letters out, get the concept that someone has lost their right to produce, subject to coming current with their reporting and assessment responsibilities. And to take it the next level to retroactivity just creates an issue that I would prefer we not have right now.
Just leaning on that because I was the one pushing for it too. Is that a gray area, a black and white area? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
is it?
It's really a balancing the equation of risk from litigation to the issue of complexity of identifying the number that we're going to seek. It was just simpler, more straightforward to do the current year.
Okay.
So just to give you a rundown of what has happened and what we're planning to do, a letter did go out to the new producers in January, reminding them of their responsibilities to produce their reports and come in compliance with the judgment. Admin staff has been and will continue to seek to contact those new producers before the April variable billing. But if we don't receive those production reports, we will be invoicing them for their full amount for their production, their full allotted production amount for 2023. That will be accompanied by a letter from Craig that will talk about the suspension / revocation of their new production right remedies and grace period, if any. The only reason I say grace period in here is that we have I'll go back to a teacher reference for me. If I give a test and 90% of the class fails, like I usually rework the question or rework my lessons. We have 90% of the new producers who aren't responding. So I think we may look at this as an opportunity to really grab attention, get people on board, and then maybe there's some grace period so that they're not hit with the full RWAs. Just give you some examples. We know that there are some new producers out there that haven't drilled their wells and then are probably seeing the bill or the invoice from the Watermaster or the production report request, or, oh, I don't have a well. So that is something we'll come back with a recommendation on that at a future meeting.
Peter, so you answered, I think, the question I was going to ask, is to make sure that, if we are at a 90% failure rate, right? So the question is, how do we, if there's something in what we're doing in a process, if the process needs to be revised, I like the teacher analogy, so I think that's great. I mean, this fundamentally isn't working the way we want it to, so we need to figure out what needs to be done.
My hope is that getting these invoices will be that kind of wake-up call, and then we should really think about what we need to do moving forward with new producers so that we can make them more responsive to us.
Or pay for the request ahead of time.
Yeah.
Maybe that will motivate them.
Yeah.
And another way of looking at the grace period is that we've already extended it by the time the letter is going out. So I'm all for grace, but it's been extended in this situation. But by the time we get to a letter from me coming to one of the producers. They've been extended the grace period actually at that point. So for further discussion.
Thank you. All right. So I think that concludes it. Holly, do it? Okay. All right. So that finishes the administrator's report. Happy to answer any other questions you might have for me.
Any other questions?
Good report.
Yeah, good comment. Your look ahead schedule. That's like you have brought the product that I never knew I needed. I've not realized what's been missing from my life. I really appreciate it.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? That motion passes. All right, and we'll go to B, which are 24-11.
Thank you. So this transfer is one of 3 transfers to RTS Orchards. So I'm going to kind of provide the background on RTS Orchards in this first transfer, and this will be applicable to the next 2 as well. So this transfer is a 629 acre-foot temporary one-time transfer from Garindo Resourceful LLC to RTS Orchards LLC. And in this transfer, both parties are Exhibit 4 parties in the West Antelope subarea. So RTS Orchards is a pistachio farm with about 410 acres that's located in the Western Antelope subarea. They're about 3 miles down gradient from the west side water bank. And they currently have permanent production rights of 1,494 acre feet per year. This includes 808 acre feet per year of production rights that they originally acquired through a property sale transfer from H&M Development, and then 686 acre feet per year that they acquired last year in June 2023 from R&M Ranch. So it's a total of 1,494 acre feet per year. And their average production, both in the past and what they project for the future, is about 1,450 acre feet per year. So prior to when they received the R&M Ranch transfer of 686 acre feet per year, they were acquiring one-time transfers to maintain their pre-ramp down production well into the future. Now that they have the annual production right that more or less covers their annual production, they've stated that this is for investment purposes. And they do not currently have a location identified for where they plan to use or transfer their current carryover water. But they've been acquiring up rights, and they currently have 6,174.72 acre feet of carryover water. And this transfer would be an additional 629 acre feet of current year production rights. This would be an additional 629 acre feet of carryover water for RTS Orchards coming from Garindo Resourceful. And they've confirmed that they are not looking to increase their annual production on the property with the pistachio farm anytime soon. And they don't have plans that they've shared to acquire future property and use the water there. So it's currently for investment purposes. And we do request that this transfer is approved on a condition that RTS Orchard submits a new point of extraction application or a subsequent transfer application before they use this carryover water. in a different way. The hydrographs of water levels near RTS show that water levels have increased over the past 10 years. This is likely due to the proximity to the West Side Water Bank. There have been some slight declines observed the last couple years, but this is likely due to potentially water bank activities, and it does not correspond to increases in production at RTS Orchards parcels. So given that, I'll also add that Grinda Resourceful has 2 wells that are currently de-equipped and capped. So all of their production right has been going towards transfers in recent years. So given all of this transfers for investment purposes, and we cannot conduct a full material injury analysis because there's not a location of use that has been identified for this transfer. So we recommend the approval on the condition that RTS Orchards submits a new point of extraction application or a subsequent transfer application prior to any production of these carryover rights. And the advisory committee recommended this transfer with 7 people, no abstentions and no no's. Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve contingent on Arden's recommendations for subsequent filing of point of extraction, which would also require them to pay another fee for the material injury analysis.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comment on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Now we will let her continue on for R24-12.
Thank you. This transfer is another transfer to RTS Orchards from Steve Selleck. It is for 65 acre-feet of current year production right for a temporary one-time transfer. Mr. Selleck has property in the Central Antelope subarea that is no longer producing water. Similarly to the last application, this transfer is for investment purposes for RTS Orchard. And so we were unable to conduct a full material injury analysis. We recommend the approval of this application on the condition that RTS Orchard submits a new point of extraction application or subsequent transfer application prior to any production. And the advisory committee recommended this application with 8 people, no abstentions, and no no's. Are there any questions?
I make the same motion again to approve with the same contingencies listed with Arden, as well as the understanding that they will be financially responsible for another material injury analysis at the time of the declared point of extraction.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other questions or public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We will go on to resolution R24-13.
Thank you. So this transfer is from Richard Selleck to RTS Orchards. It is almost identical to the previous transfer from Steve Selleck. It's for 65 acre-feet of temporary one-time transfer. The Richard Selleck's property is the same as Steve Selleck's property, and it's also in the Central Antelope subarea, and the well has not been used for many years. Similarly, we cannot conduct a full material injury analysis. There's no point of extraction that is identified, and so we recommend approval on the condition that RTS submits a new point of extraction or subsequent transfer application in order to produce with this transfer. and the advisory committee similarly approved or recommended this for approval with 8 votes, no abstentions, no no's.
Let's see if I can do this 3 times in a row. I make the motion to approve with Arden's contingencies being listed and it clearly stated to the applicant that they are responsible for paying for future material injury analysis.
Got better.
It's a little better, right? Just a little tweak.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes.
And can I make a quick comment? The administrator confirmed that all the parties involved in these transfers are up to date in terms of production reporting and assessments. So we always want to keep that in mind. Those who ask us for favors, benefits, action, need to be up to speed, up to date on their production reporting.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, probably here is not the right time, but remind me, I'll just drop it. I don't think it's in our rules and regs or in a process that we use for applications to get in front of this board. Instead of us having to ask that or question it, I think it would be great just to check the box before it even gets in front of advisory committee and even in front of the board they are current. So we don't even, I'd even say before it even gets to the engineer and we're spending money and they're spending money. So probably not the right time, but I think that's an important thing to think about.
Okay. All right. We're going to go to R2414.
Thank you. So this is the last transfer that we have for y'all today. This is a one-time transfer of 400 acre-feet from Lane Family Trust to Vulcan Materials. And so Lane Family Trust has a permanent production right of 890 acre-feet per year. This includes the original production right of 773 acre-feet per year. And then last year, there was a transfer of 170 acre-feet per year from Little Rock Sand and Gravel Company. Though this transfer the rights are tied to the land that it originated for Little Rock Sand and Gravel parcels. So in my material injury analysis, I really looked at the parcels that were listed in the application from Lane Family Trust and the ones that were tied to their original 773 acre-foot per year production right. So they have parcels that are in the southeast sub-area, the central sub-area, and the west Antelope sub-area. And I included a chart in the application letter that shows the change in production over time for the Lane Family Trust parcels. And it does show that the wells, I divided it up by sub-area, and you can see that the wells in the southeast sub-area have been decreasing in their production since 2019. And so, I'm sorry. Sorry, one second. Okay, they have been decreasing their production in the southeast Antelope sub-area since 2019. So Vulcan Materials has wells in the southeast sub-area, and they regularly pump more water than their production right of 260 acre-feet per year. And their production has slightly increased in recent years. It was at 650 acre-feet in 2023. And in the application, I also show the changes in production by Vulcan Materials juxtaposed against the changes in production by sub-area with the Lane Family Trust. So Vulcan has received transfers to cover their replacement obligations in past years, and they did have enough to cover their to cover their production in 2023. So this would be to cover future replacement obligations because they do intend to continue to produce at a similar rate in future years. There aren't very close monitoring wells to the production near Vulcan Materials, but there's one well that is north of both the Lane and the Vulcan parcels that has shown slightly increasing water levels in the last few years. Vulcan Materials has a well called the Big Rock Well, more towards the east, and we do observe some decreasing water levels near that well, but this well has not produced any water over the past few years, and we have communicated to them that preferably most of their production stays more on the western side of the basin, where the water levels do appear to be more stable. So given all of this information, we find the potential for material injury to be negligible, given that this is a one-time transfer and that much of the carryover water in this transfer is accrued from decreases in production from the wells in the southeast sub-area of the Lane Family Trust parcels. We also found that this transfer would not significantly increase pumping from historical pumping, especially given that much of that pumping was coming from Lane Family Trust parcels that were quite close to the Vulcan Materials parcel. And this was recommended by the advisory committee. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Arden, I have a question for you. When you say historical pumping, it kind of hits a little bit of a chord with some of us. You know, my historical pumping showed X and then got reduced by half. So what historical pumping are you guys using as a reference point?
Yes, I am looking at the production since the parties have been submitting production reports for 2017.
So that would include the ramp down period.
Yes, that does include the ramp down period.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion? Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Do I hear any public comments on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of resolution 2414 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Now we'll go on to item number 13, which is consideration and possible action on non-production monitoring well applications. This is a staff report by staff.
Thank you, Kathy. This month we have one non-production well application. This is for Mission Linen Supply in the Central Antelope sub-area. The application is for 2 non-production wells. These wells will be used to extract water from the perched aquifer to depress the water levels, and soil vapor extractions will be used to remove mass contaminants in the soil. Mission Linen is a commercial uniform service facility, and they offer laundry services. And over time, it was found that a contaminant known as PEC, which is usually found in WD-40 and degreasers, has made its way into the soil. In 2011, Lahontan Regional Control Board did issue an open site assessment for this property, and the remediation has been ongoing. These 2 non-production wells will be used to support Mission Linen's approved corrective action plan that was approved in September 2023 by the Lahontan Regional Control Board. The amount of water to be pumped is approximately 20,000 gallons of water for each well, which is less than the 0.25 acre feet of water per year for a non-production well. Advisory did recommend approval on this application, and so does staff.
Question for you, did they find that in the water on site? Are they concerned about that?
It was found in the soil.
It was found in soil, but okay. Where's the report on that accessible through, do you know?
Their report, Apex's report, it's in the agenda packet on page
I must have missed that.
186, but I can get you Lahontan Regional Controls.
No, the Lahontan ones are what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I can give you the site or a web link that you can review all reports since the day of the site assessment.
All right.
The history.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, resolution 2416, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay, now we will go on to the administrator's report.
All right, thank you again. So we just want to give a 2-month outlook on the different activities that we're planning coming up. And so, Holly, could you advance the slide? Thank you. I guess we'll start with February. Just let you know that we planned on presenting the replacement water rates for approval. That was done. Presenting the draft RFQ and getting direction from the board on Watermaster engineer contract. So those things all came to fruition at this meeting. Moving into March, we're looking at some administrative activities. The annual production reports are due March 1st. So we're gonna be assessing who actually turned those in on time and getting those reports over to Arden and Todd Groundwater. Fixed assessments are due also on March 1st. And for those that haven't turned them in, we'll be sending out reminder notices. And we plan on bringing the final draft RFQ to the Watermaster board for consideration. And my assumption is that we'll be able to if there's any small things that we need to tie up, we should be able to do that in session in March so that we can send that out after the meeting to different parties. And we'll send out that RFQ. And so instead of Todd Groundwater providing a draft proposal, we will potentially have a review of Todd Groundwater at that March meeting.
The other one that it sounded like they had mixed ideas on was whether there would be a probationary period. Some thought it was very prudent, and then others thought that could discourage someone that would be a qualified applicant otherwise.
To be like a building in reviews with the option to extend the contract subject to a positive review is essentially a probation period. So to me, I think we're okay.
And I mean, the one good thing is when we develop the RFQ and RFP, we'll know what the market thinks about what we're asking, right? By what we get in as well.
Right.
So, I know not, in that manner, but longevity is important to the number of people, knowing that they are accountable, but longevity is key of, continuity.
Yeah.
Right. And I think part of the reasoning for the committee to say that it could be a hybrid is maybe not make it a hybrid, but include a draft of what the request for proposals might look like so that people that are submitting their qualifications know what they're headed towards, even if it's not a final, maybe as a appendix or something. I think that was the thinking behind that comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, because from what I read and understand, I think we pretty much are getting their gist, and a lot of what we said seems like that will cover their concerns. Is there any other public that has any additional feedback that they would like to enter? We would like to hear it if you have any. Okay.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
There was the qualification of some experience with California water law, and I can't emphasize enough, to me, that is an important item. Right now, we're dealing with an administrator who has 7 years of experience in interpreting the judgment. Angel and Patty are lawyers, as far as I'm concerned. They deal with the public all the time and interface with the public and have answers to questions about the judgment. And I just would like to keep foremost in mind that there's some experience with not necessarily with an adjudication, though that would be wonderful. Experience with California water law of some type.
Craig, I agree with you. I think that the cream will rise to the top if the people have that to offer. But looking on my financial budget here right now, I got a pretty good line item for you. So I got a lot of faith in our legal ability at this point. So I'm not as worried about that. It would be nice, but I don't think it has to be an absolute 100% requirement that they have people with the years of experience that Angel and Patty have. It's definitely a bonus and it's definitely something nice. Yeah. But I'm trying not to limit our pool as much as possible because I think it's a narrow field out there.
Although I think I'd like to pay administrative hourly rate versus the lawyers.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
And that's really, I mean, that's the sober truth. The more that can be dealt at the window, so to speak, with answers to questions, the less it goes to the lawyer.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like you'll be bringing that back to us, and we had a good discussion on that. So now we will go to number 10, which is consideration and possible action on authorization to seek an amendment to the existing professional services agreement with Todd Groundwater. And that's the staff report from our administrator.
All right, thank you again. So, as you're likely aware, Todd Groundwater's contract runs through 2024, but then ends. So we need to decide what we're going to do in terms of our engineering services in 2025 and beyond. And based on staff's understanding of board satisfaction with Todd Groundwater and Todd Groundwater's willingness to continue, we're suggesting that the board authorize us to seek an extension with Todd Groundwater for engineering services for 3 years, like their last amendment. And we're looking for feedback from the board. We're actually looking for authorization for us to develop that scope of work and bring that back to the board for approval.
Well, I guess the first question is Todd Groundwater willing to take us on for another 3 years?
We posed that question and we've heard positive responses, but I don't want to speak for Todd Groundwater. I'll let them speak up if they like.
Yes, this is Arden. I am happy to confirm that we would really love to continue working with the Antelope Valley Watermaster.
My only comment on it is when you're coming to the end of a contract term, I think procedurally wise, it's wise to always do a little review of it. Just go through a review real quick before you make any determination. But that's just a thought.
So you'd like to see it like an item brought back to us when we review it?
Yeah, just a quick review and go over it. And I think procedurally, that's a good thing to have in place.
I would like to see a performance review and then prior to us deciding what to do on this. I'm glad and thank you, Todd Groundwater, for accepting and working with on this. And I think it would be good to, if we do a multi-year again, we have an annual review as well with them. Something that's more, a process in place versus just feedback at board meetings or advisory meetings. Okay. I think that's a good thing that we can solicit that from advisory committee as well as public, and we can give our own feedback. They know what they agree.
Well, I think it'll be something to have with a future administrator as well. Sometimes have that process in place, just as a procedural aspect for the Watermaster.
Okay, and we're comfortable doing that. I just want to give my thoughts on what that might look like, and then we can maybe move forward. We can go back, look at their previous scope of work, and highlight that, send that out to the advisory committee and to the board, and then solicit feedback, and then staff can compile that. And then truly the review would be, from my perspective, coming from the board. because I've only been the administrator for 2 months, so it's probably unfair for me to give that review. And then we can do that review at a future meeting. Is that a comfortable process for the board? Or?
Is for me. Okay. Everybody else is okay.
Okay, that sounds good. So is the direction to table this item until we do that process?
I think that would be the appropriate action that we.
I support that.
Okay, is everyone fine with tabling that?
Just so I'm clear, so we're not giving direction to negotiate a scope and fee at this time. We're going to do the evaluation first.
That's what I'd support.
Yeah, that's what I feel is the right course of action.
And is there any public that would like to comment on that? Any additional feedback? Since that is what we're looking at to do before we bring it back. Okay, so we will table that until we get further information.
Do we need a motion on that, or just?
Do we need a motion?
The table.
You know, I think the board can do it by voice vote. But
Okay. Thank you. All right. So number 11, consideration and possible action on new production application and a staff report with our engineer.
Hi, good morning. So today we have 2 new production applications and several transfer applications. So the first one is a new production application for Martin Torres and Blanca Vasquez. And we have confirmed that this is a different Martin Torres than the individual who is an existing new production party. This application was tabled last month because there was concerns that this applicant was already a new production party to the judgment and that he had some outstanding production reporting that had not yet been submitted. And so we've confirmed. Yes.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt you for a moment, just so that you know, Mr. Torres is here in the audience with us today.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
The other one.
I'm glad you could make it out. And we're so sorry for the confusion about the existing party. So this application is a 1 acre-foot per year new production application for domestic use in the Central Antelope sub-area. And it would be a single-family home of about 1,600 square feet with minimal irrigated landscaping. And the advisory committee unanimously recommended this application for approval. Are there any questions?
Since I'm the one that caused the delay last time on the mistaken identity, I'd gladly be the one to make the motion to approve this time.
I'll second it.
All right. I have a motion as second. Is there any comments, public comments? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. You're welcome. Now we will go on to B, which is R2415.
So this application is a new production application for 1 acre-foot for András Belo. And this is the domestic well for a single-family home that would have some irrigation of trees and plants. And this application, we had to take some time to look at a bit more thoroughly because there were existing buildings on the property, which meant that it's considered an improved parcel and then cannot be part of the Willis class. And so we confirmed with the party that this property is not using groundwater from a nearby well. It looks like in the past they shared a well with a nearby property, but currently Mr. Balo is getting water delivered to the property and he would like to be able to drill his own well. And there's no shared well agreement and no evidence that he has been using his neighbor's well. So we recommend the approval of this application subject to the applicant's requirement to intervene and become a party to the judgment. Because this cannot qualify as a Willis class application. And the advisory committee unanimously recommends this for approval, and we recommend the application for approval because we found that material injury is likely to be negligible. Are there any questions about this?
No questions?
I move to approve resolution R2415.
Well, second.
Okay, I
I have a
have
question.
a motion and a second, and go ahead, Brandon.
I'm looking on his application here where it says water conservation practices, and he estimated his annual pumping from his new well at 1.5 acre feet. So are we on our agenda it says 1 acre foot? Which one is?
We confirmed this with the applicant, and it's for 1 acre foot.
Okay, very good. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions or public comment? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We will go to number 12, which is consideration and possible action on transfer applications. And this also is our staff report with our engineer.
Thank you. So the first application is a transfer of 51.44 acre feet of one-time carryover water from Antelope Valley Country Club to Sunrise Ranch LLC. And these are parties that are both in the central Antelope sub-area. And I know the advisory committee had some questions about the production rights associated with Antelope Valley Country Club. So I'll first walk through that. Antelope Valley Country Club was a small pumping class member, but also listed under Exhibit 8 as a party with rights to produce imported water return flows, or IWRFs. And in last year, they became an Exhibit 4 party. They received a 1 acre foot transfer. And so as an Exhibit 4 party, they now have the right to receive carryover water from unused imported water return flows. And they also have the rights to be able to transfer this IWRF or carryover water from the IWRF water. So Antelope Valley Country Club's production from 2016 to 2021, it ranged from 157 to 465 acre feet per year. But in the last 2 years, they have not produced any water. So in 2022 and 2023, their production was 0. So because they became an Exhibit 4 party and they weren't producing any water, in 2023, their 51.44 acre feet of IWRF water was then able to become carryover water. And this transfer is transferring that carryover water to Sunrise Ranch LLC. Now, Sunrise Ranch LLC is also an Exhibit 4 party in the central Antelope sub-area. And this transfer would be used for agricultural purposes on the parcels that are listed under this party and included in the application. This party is also owned by Gary Van Dam, who has 466 acre feet per year of permanent production rights. And he submits all of the pumping documentation joint as Gary Van Dam and Sunrise Ranch. And these parcels are listed both under Sunrise Ranch and Gary Van Dam parties. And so production from both parties at these parcels was zero in 2021 and 2022. But this transfer would be used at the specific parcels listed in the application. So we looked at water levels in the area. We did see a slight decline in water levels in the vicinity of Antelope Valley Country Club. There was one well that had a decrease between 2022 and 2023 that almost looked like a data measurement error, but we're going to be keeping a close eye on that well. But that being said, the declines are in the area where this water is being transferred from, and the water is being transferred to the Sunrise Ranch parcels. And the water levels in those areas are either stable or they're slightly increasing a bit. And so looking at water levels in the area and recognizing that there's no material injury associated with groundwater storage or sustainable yield, and this is staying in the same sub-area, we find the potential for material injury to be negligible. This does not represent new production. It's the transfer of IWRF gone to carryover. I'll note that the advisory committee voted 7 yes, and then 2, I think the middle number is abstain, and 1 no for this application. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Do I have?
What was the basis on the one no vote? Dennis Lammer was walking up on it.
3 times today. I don't know what I'm going to do. I should make it more clear. The votes are listed in order of yes, no, and abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. So 2 no's and abstain.
Yeah, so there was 7 yes, 2 no's, and 1 abstention.
What was the purpose for the no? Did they state a reason?
No, they were just committee members who had questioned the history of these rights, and they voted no.
Okay, because I'm not seeing a basis for no, so I was just curious. Craig, I mean, is there anything that concerns you with this?
No, it's a rich history.
Okay.
In Little Valley Country Club.
And 7 is a quorum or majority of the committee.
Okay, all right. I was just curious. Thank you.
2024 at 10 a.m. So I'm calling the board call to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Matt, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. For your heart, eyes on flag, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Knutson?
Here.
Director Bryden?
Here.
Director Urosic?
Here.
Director Calandri?
Here.
And Vice Chair McLaren.
Here.
We have Peter Thompson?
Here.
Arden Wells? On the line?
I'm here. Good morning.
And Craig Parton.
Here.
Everybody's present.
Okay. Number 4 is the adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt?
Motion.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay, next we will go to number 5, which is public comments for non-agenda items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding Watermaster business that is not on the agenda. Without acting or entering a dialogue with the public, board members may ask clarifying questions about topics posed by the public. Your matter may be referred to the administrator and or advisory committee. Do I have any public comment? Do we have any online? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda, which is A, the financial reports month ending January 31st, 2024, B, payment of bills through February 15th, 2024, and C, minutes of January 24th, 2024, regular board meeting. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda? Okay, we have okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Number 7 is the advisory committee report, and we will let our advisory committee chair, Lamoureux.
Good morning. Dennis Lamoureux with the advisory committee. The memo will speak for itself on several items in the agenda. I do want to publicly thank the administration staff for giving us a few extra days to review the draft RFQ. So appreciate that. And we were able to get a good number of comments from the committee because of that. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay,
All right,
no questions at this time. Thank you. All right, number 8 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed 2024 replacement water assessment rate for Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association. This is a staff report by our administrator.
All right. Good morning, board. Thank you, Chair McLaren. Before you have a resolution to adopt the replacement water assessment rate for 2024. Just to give a little background, we've been using the same methodology since we started doing replacement water assessments. The Antelope Valley State Water Contractor Association develops the rates through a methodology that Raftalis, a consultant, put together for us. That was challenged in court, and it triumphed. So we're not breaking the mold here. We're not doing anything different. We're using the same methodology and applying, just putting the inputs in and getting the results out. And we're staying consistent with that. So what you have is a change from $563 an acre feet in 2023 up to $607 an acre foot in 2024 for those that are inside AV State Water Contractor Association boundaries. And then a change from 1,119 acre feet, $1,100, man, can speak today. That's tough. Anyways, $1,119 per acre foot up to $1,190 an acre foot for those that are outside of the basin. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this if you have them.
Peter, would you mind just explaining real quick, because I've gotten a few phone calls on it. I want to make sure we cover it, the reason for the 2 different charges within the boundaries and outside the boundaries.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So because the state water contractors, AVEC, Palmdale Water District, Little Rock Creek Irrigation,
recording in progress,
provide that water, all the property owners within our boundaries pay taxes to support the infrastructure to bring that water here. We wanted to recognize within the rate that those with inside should get a cheaper rate, and those outside should pay some cost that recognizes those capital investments for the state water project. So it's really a matter of creating equity between those who have paid for the infrastructure and those who have not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion for R24-09?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, no public comment. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 9 is consideration and possible action on the draft request for qualifications to provide professional administrative services, and that will be a staff report from our administrator.
All right. Good morning again. So just a little clarity here. We're not looking for any specific action today. We want to let you know where we are on the process and get your feedback as we finalize the draft RFQ. However, if the board has some sort of unanimous specific action they want to direct to us, we're open to having that direction. I do want to thank the advisory committee. They did a great job of providing feedback, and I believe it was very on point and fits within the intent of the RFQ, and we plan on incorporating that into the new draft. So I'm going to walk through just a few slides that talk about refresh on the process and refresh on the feedback, and then I'm going to solicit some feedback from the board on that RFQ. So next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to touch base on the process. So we're doing this RFQ process because we wanted to break it up into 2 sections. One, we want to cast that net wide, bring in qualified parties, and allow the board and the advisory committee to assess them based on qualifications before we start getting down into the finer points of the scope of work and the cost. So we're going to do those qualifications first and then do the request for proposals second. We're seeking those qualified parties that are interested in providing admin services. We do want to give the board and advisory committee ample time to review those parties, review the statement of qualifications that we get back, and then have the opportunity to interview the ones that you select. So hopefully then we move on to interviewing selected applicants, and then optimally we'll choose one or more of those to provide an RFP to, and then we can make our final selection. But I just want to make sure that the board is still comfortable with the RFQ process that we've proposed.
The question I have, I just want clarity on it. I think you answered it. Are we adapting the wishes of the advisory committee into the RFQ process? Because I see it was an 11 unanimous vote. So are we incorporating what they requested?
We will be. I believe most of them are directly applicable and fit with what we need. There's a few that are salient points, but will be incorporated in the RFP rather than the RFQ. But I'm happy to walk through each of those comments individually if you would like.
I've read it. I feel good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a comment to that. I think, did hear it in the advisory call as well as had calls from landowners. I think that Brandon did as well, that had a lot of push to make sure we beef up and take those recommendations and add them to the RFQ before we go out, so that it's more clear and more direct than what it maybe states right now. So
yes,
appreciate that.
And one last question too: are we, either Peter or Matt can answer this, or are we doing okay on the timeline of our process with AVAC? Is AVAC happy with how this is moving along? Because I know that you guys were a Band-Aid, thankful Band-Aid that you guys are here, but are we doing okay as far as meeting the timeline as far as the AVAC board's concerned with your guys' services?
I can speak for AVAC. So far we're comfortable, and that's why we didn't put a time restriction in the MOU.
Okay.
All right. We recognize that it could take a little longer.
All right. Just want to make sure we're reciprocating everything we need.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
So are you we do want him to go through?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
As long as he's taking that and that's fine.
Okay.
And we'll endeavor to get the next draft early again to the advisory committee, so there's ample time to review the adjustments that we've made. And same thing, we'll try to extend that. We'll extend that same courtesy to the board as well.
Great. Okay. And since we will not be voting on it today, but I would like to open it up, which I still can, if there's any other public comments.
Sure. I have just a couple more slides to go
Okay.
through. If
Oh,
that's all right.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No problem. Next slide. All right. So there were some comments about the qualifications that we were looking for, and I just wanted to kind of condense those, talk about them with the board, make sure that these align correctly. So we're looking for someone or some party that has the ability to lead with patience, diplomacy, transparency, and impartiality, the ability to work with diverse and sometimes contentious interests, and be able to develop consensus while maintaining the integrity of the judgment. We're also looking for someone who has skill as a communicator and a program or project manager, general understanding of groundwater, hydrology, and California water rights, track record of facilitating forward progress under tight budget constraints, and experience in performing similar administrative services. So these are relatively broad, but I think that's intentional. We want to sort of cast that net wide and then give you the most potential qualified applicants to review for the statement of qualifications. We will, within the next draft of the RFQ, make these more prominent so that it's more clear what qualifications we're seeking. But just wanted to tee those up, and that part, while you're sitting there and I go through my next slides, think about whether or not there are things you want to add or subtract from that. Next slide, please. All right. So just wanted to review the advisory committee's feedback. And this is just a brief summary of their summary and the way I interpret it. So there's a need to improve the alignment with the RFQ's intent. The draft has RFP verbiage in it, and that content needs to be removed or adjusted. We need to improve some clarity. So we need to be consistent in some of our choice of terms that we use, and we need to emphasize this two-step process a little better. And many places within the document, proposals should have been replaced with statement of qualifications. And we recognize that creates some confusion. Another thing that we're going to be looking for some feedback on, it was the estimated length of the contract that was stated within the draft RFQ, and it was 3 to 5 years. And I think is an appropriate comment from the advisory committee that that's probably too long for this initial contract, and maybe we even consider just removing any estimated term from that RFQ. So that's a summary of the feedback. There's other points. Some of them were legal in nature. Some of them pointed more towards refining the scope, and we believe that those are applicable for the RFP process. And we'll turn this next draft over to Craig so that he can give it a good, thorough review as well. All right, next slide. So what we're looking for today is some feedback on the process and the timeline. Make sure that we're on board with that. Get some feedback on the qualifications that we listed. Some feedback as well on the estimated contract length and whether we keep it or not or shorten it. And then any other additional feedback the board or public or advisory committee might have. So that's my last slide, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chair McLaren, to lead that discussion.
Okay. All right. So should we take it like in order, like the process and timeline?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Is there any concern about the process or timeline from the board?
As long as we're adapting what the advisory committee is requesting, I think we're good on that part of it.
Okay. And David's continued willingness. Those two things, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And how about qualifications? Do we like the wording and broad wording that he put down for the qualifications?
The only thing that I would have on the qualifications is with the job of the administrator, we have a Watermaster engineer that is paid for their knowledge in hydrology, water, and everything. You know, I think that it would be nice to have a knowledge of it, but an administrator is, their job's more accounting based, more working with boards in that area. It's not as big of a deal for me, their knowledge of hydrology, as it is with their ability to operate as a true administrator. It would be nice, but I don't think it's a absolute requirement for the administrative role.
Anyone else on anything with the qualifications? Okay. How about the estimated contract length?
It's wise advice. I don't know that I would want a 1-year contract. I think that got us into trouble this last time. I'd like to see a review mechanism built into a contract that gave us off ramps if things weren't working out, but to not put us in a situation where we had to renegotiate a contract after 12 months. So I'd be looking for something of a hybrid with off ramps.
Maybe I'll just lean into that, Russ, that, you know, I do think a performance review is there, right? Especially in the contract, use that for cause portion of it. But, you know, I want to mitigate us having to deal with this every year or for a while. And I think showing longevity to them as well as to us will bring continuity there, as long as we have a process to communicate to them and, you know, quarterly, you know, semi-annually that performance, I think, is helpful.
Eloquent as always. Thank you.
And I also agree that 3 to 5 years is too long. I think 3 is probably the max I would want to see.
Okay. All right. And any additional feedback that these aren't covered?
Do we want to get some feedback from Dennis on that? Or, I mean, like right now?
Sure.
If there's something to add.
Sorry, Dennis.
No.
Except that the memo speaks for itself. That's what it is. You can say Peter.
And no, you're not sorry. I think I've heard a lot of encouragement here for supporting the committee's work. And I think all the points that we talked about have been brought up. So I don't know if there's anything else to add. You know, I think once you get past the RFQ and RFP process, some of this will boil down into how the contract is laid out. And, you know, even if it's more than a 1-year term, as long as there's, like Derek said, off ramps built in and reviews, I think it would work.
Yeah, and, you know, and I encourage all of us, advisory and the public, you know, this was a last rough administration process, that isn't norm. I think a lot of us, hopefully from other responsibilities, have seen how that works, you know, very fluently. So be aware of them, use that as part of our contract structure, but don't, you know, create so many roadblocks that we can't get this thing done.